Welcome to AmeenAcademy.com. Let us do the real heroes of India freedom fighters, Jawaharlal Nehru. Jawaharlal Nehru, 1889 to 1964, was a prominent Indian leader and freedom fighter who played a central role in India's independence movement and served as the country's first prime minister. Born in Allahabad, Nehru was homeschooled until he was 15. When he went to England to attend Harrow and Cambridge University, he was called to the bar from Inner Temple. Political involvement. Nehru returned to India in 1922 and became involved in politics, serving as Secretary of the Home Rule League Allahabad, General Secretary of the All India Congress Committee, a signer of the Nehru Report on Indian constitutional reforms. Nehru became India's first prime minister in 1947 and served until his death in 1964. Nehru contributions include implementing moderate socialist economic reforms, committing India to policy of industrialization, establishing parliamentary government, championing parliamentary democracy, secularism, science and technology. Nehru wrote several books, including Letters from the Father of to his daughter in 1929, an autobiography of 1936, and Discovery of India 1946. Nehru is considered a symbol of the hopes and aspiration of a resurgent India. He is also known for his appeal that cut across caste barriers. For the detail, after the Lahore session of 1929, Nehru emerged as the leader of the country's intellectuals and youth. Gandhi had shrewdly elevated him to the presidency of the Congress Party over the heads of some of his seniors, hoping that Nehru would draw India's youth, who at that time were gravitating towards extreme leftist causes, into the mainstream of the Congress movement. Gandhi also correctly calculated that the added responsibility, Nehru himself would be inclined to keep to the middle way. After his father's death in 1931, Nehru moved into the inner councils of the Congress party and became closer to Gandhi, although Gandhi did not officially designate Nehru is political heir until 1942. The Indian populace, as early as mid of 1930s, saw in Nehru the natural successor to Gandhi. The Gandhi-Irwin Pact of 1931, signed between Gandhi and the Britain Viceroy, Lord Irwin, signi- signalizing a truce between the two principal protagonists in India. It climaxed of the India's more effective civil disobedience movements, launched the year before as the Salt March, in the course of which Nehru had been arrested. Hopes that Gandhi's Irwin Pact would be the prelude to more relaxed period of Indo-British relations were not borne out. Lord Wellington, who replaced Irwin as viceroy in 1931, jailed Gandhi in January 1932, shortly after Gandhi's return from the Second Roundtable Conference in London. He was charged with attempting to mount another civil disobedience movement. Nehru was also arrested and sentenced to 2 years imprisonment. The Three Roundtable Conference in London, held to advance India's progress to self-government, eventually resulted in the Government of India Act in 1935, which gave Indian provinces as a system of popular autonomous government. Ultimately, it providing for a federal system composed of the autonomous province and princely state, although federation never came into being. When the election of the following introduction of provincial autonomy brought the Congress party to power in a majority of the provinces, Nehru was faced with a dilemma. The Muslim League and Muhammad Ali Jinnah, who was to become the creator of Pakistan, had fared badly at the polls. Congress therefore unwisely rejected Jinnah's plea for the formation of coalition government Congress Muslim League government in some of the provinces, a decision that Nehru had supported. The subsequent clash between the Congress and the Muslim League hardened into a conflict between Hindu and Muslim that was ultimately to lead to the partition of India and the creation of Pakistan. Imprisonment during World War II. At the outbreak of World War II in September 1939, the Viceroy Lord Linlithgow had committed India to war without consulting the autonomous provincial ministries. The Congress Party's high command withdrew its provincial ministries as a protest, but Congress action left the political field virtually open to Jinnah and the Muslim League. In October 1940, Gandhi, abandoning his original stand, decided to launch a limited civil disobedience campaign in which leading advocates of Indian independence were selected to participate by one. Nehru, the second of those leaders, was arrested and sentenced to 4 years imprisonment. After spending a little more than a year in jail, he was released, along with the other Congress prisoners, 3 days before the bombing of Pearl Harbor in Hawaii. The Prime Minister Winston Churchill dispatched Sir Stafford Cripps, a member of the British War Cabinet who was politically close to Nehru and also knew Jinnah, with proposals for a settlement of the constitutional problem. Cripps' mission failed, however, for Gandhi would accept nothing less than independence. The initiative in the Congress party then passed to Gandhi, who called on the British to leave India. Nehru, though reluctant to embrace the war effort, had no alternative but to join Gandhi. Within 2 years after his release, India was to be partitioned and free. A final attempt by the Viceroy Lord Wavell to bring the Congress Party and the Muslim League together failed. The Labour government that had meanwhile displaced Churchill's wartime administration dispatched as one of its first act a cabinet mission to India and later replaced Lord Wavell with Lord Mountbatten. Achievements as a Prime Minister. Jawaharlal Nehru, Indira Gandhi, and Harry S. Truman, the first India Prime Minister, they wrote the India Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru, second from this, not necessary now. In 35 years of 1929, when Gandhi chose Nehru as a president of the Congress session in Lahore, until his death, a prime minister in 1964, Nehru remained, despite the debacle of the brief conflict with China in 1962, the idol of his people. His secular approach to politics contrasted with Gandhi's religious and traditionalist attitude, which during Gandhi's lifetime and had given an Indian politics to religious caste, misleadingly so. For although Gandhi may have appeared to be a religious conservative, he was actually a social non-conformist trying to secularize Hinduism. The importance of Nehru is the perspective of Indian history is that he imported modern values and ways of thinking, which he adapted to Indian conditions. Apart from his stress on secularism and on the basic unity of India. Apart from his stress on secularism and on the basic unity of India. Despite its ethnic and religious diversities, Nehru was deeply concerned with carrying India forward into the modern age of scientific di- discovery and technological development. Internationally, Nehru's star was in the ascendant until October 1956 when the India's attitude on the Hungarian Revolution against the Soviet brought his policy of non-alignment neutralism under sharp scrutiny by the non-communist countries. The month-long Sino-Indian War of 1962, however, exposed Nehru's wishful thinking on non-alignment. When Chinese forces threatened to overrun the Brahmaputra River valley in the northeast as the result of long-standing border dispute. Kashmir region claimed by both India and Pakistan remained a perennial problem throughout Nehru's term as Prime Minister. In the month after the partition of the subcontinent in 1947, he made tentative effort to settle the dispute between the two new countries while Hari Singh, the Maharaja of Kashmir, decided on which country he would join. When Singh closed India, however, fighting broke out between the two sides. A UN brokered a ceasefire line in the region, and Nehru proposed territorial adjustments along the line that failed. That Nehru was more fortunate in his effort to solve the problem of the Portuguese colony of Goa, the last remaining foreign controlled entity in India. Although its military occupation by Indian troops in December 1961 raised a furor in many Western countries in the hindsight of history, Nehru's action is justificable with the withdrawal of the British and the French and Portuguese colonial presence in India had become an anachronism. Nehru's health showed signs of deteriorating not long after the clash with China. He suffered a slight stroke in 1963 and a more debilitating attack followed in January 1964. He died a few months later from third and fatal stroke. Legacy. While consciously assertive in his Indianness, Nehru never exuded the Hindu aura and atmosphere clinging to Gandhi's personality. Because of his modern political and economic outlook, he was able to attract the younger intelligentsia of India to Gandhi's movement of nonviolent resistance against the British and later to rally them around him after independence had been gained. Nehru's Western upbringing and his visit to Europe before independence had acclimatized him to Western ways of thinking. Nehru did not conceal his stubbornness with Gandhi's on many basic social, economic, and political issues. He did not share Gandhi's aversion to industrialization, and he saw it too that India's early 5 year plan after the independence were geared towards heavy manufacturing. Of all the leaders of Congress party, including Gandhi, Nehru alone had given a serious thought to India's place in the world's community that enabled him not only to educate the Indian populace on foreign affairs before independence, but to project his own views to Indian foreign policy when freedom came. If Gandhi made Indians aware of India, Nehru made them as aware of others. When India achieved independence, the image is presented to the world was really Nehru's image in the early years of Indian nationhood. The world identified India with Nehru. Though his 17 years in the Prime Minister's office, he held up democratic socialism as the guiding star, emphasizing that India needed to achieve both democracy and socialism with the help of the overwhelming majority that the Congress party maintained in the parliament during his term of office. He advanced towards that goal. The four pillars of his domestic policies were democracy, socialism, unity, and secularism. He succeeded to a large extent in maintaining the edifice supported by those four pillars during his lifetime. One more time, the four pillars of his democratic policies were democracy, socialism, unity, and secularism. So far, we discussed about the first India's first Prime Minister as well freedom fighter Jawaharlal Nehru. We have done. Please subscribe our YouTube channel.